Hey guys, Teresa here. Welcome back to my channel, Lost My Thread. Today I want to invite you to join me as I create a pattern mashup. I'm going to be putting together the Anthea Blouse by Anna Allen and the Farris Jumpsuit by Jennifer Lauren Handmade to create my dream jumpsuit. This is going to be a bit of a different video. It's more of a sew along with me. It's not a full tutorial about how to do this. I did mention that I wanted to do a mashup of these two patterns in my fall sewing plans, and I've had a couple of people actually ask me if I could put together a tutorial about how to take two patterns, put them together to create a jumpsuit. I will say that that really honestly is so variable depending on the type of patterns that you're using, but I will definitely show you guys the process and talk through how I mash these two up so that I can make sure the pieces are going to fit together. I do have some set up here for some overhead shots, so I'm definitely going to be showing you what it looks like when I'm putting them together. But honestly, it's more of just a hang out with me and see how things go. This is an experimental project, and whenever you're experimenting, there are probably going to be some mistakes. You're probably going to see some problem solving. We'll see how far I get today. This may end up having to be filmed over a couple of days, but I have a day off. I'm having a sewing day, and I thought I'd take you guys with me. I'm going to start with the back pieces because these are easier for a variety of reasons. This is the jumpsuit that I know fits me both in the length here and also in the circumference around the waist. This is the Anthea blouse that I want to essentially turn into this shape. So I'm going to start off by matching up these place on fold lines. I want to make sure that the shoulder seam is matching. I know that this jumpsuit has a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, whereas this blouse has a half-inch seam allowance. So I do want to overlap by just about a 1/4 inch at the top. I'm going to shift this down. Obviously the necklines are slightly different where they're going to meet up, but just to give me an idea, I'm overlapping by just about a 1/4 of an inch. I'm eyeballing it, guys. You could be much better than me, but I'm happy with that. And then mainly I just want to mark this point where it's going to be for the length so that I know that way if that is the length of this blouse, it's going to do the right amount of like gathering and lengthening on the body. Now I am aware, I already forgot to do it. Tissue paper will bleed underneath if you're not careful, if you're tracing with a marker. So I'm going to protect my table and I'm going to draw a line, making sure that I'm perpendicular to this fold line. And that is the new length of the back bodice. So for the waist circumference, it's going to be very much the same. I'm just lining these up, and I know that this jumpsuit has a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. This blouse normally has a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but I really do want to go with like the same standard 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to just trace the line that's on this back bodice piece, just literally this corner. This is now going to be my new width of this piece. So all I have to do now is just along this line, I just need to true that up. So I've got a curved ruler. I don't know how much I'm going to curve this line anyway. I think if I went completely straight, that would remove some of the space that needs to give me area to move around the arms and under the bust, and I don't want to remove too much of that. So I think I'm going to go just a little bit out, start just making a little approximate dotted line to here, and then I think at this bit, I think that's fine. So I've got a little bit of space still in the bust area. This is a little bit more complicated with the front bodice, not massively. So to start, they're reversed. So this is the center front, this is the center front here. So I just need to flip this over. And then I still want to do the same thing where I'm basically just overlapping at the top of the shoulder a 1/4 inch, lining up along this line. And again, guys, I'm being approximate. You can be really good in measure. I'm good with this. Mark my line. Apparently then, that's what I remember to put my paper underneath. This bodice piece, because this is made for different bust cup sizes, it already has like a fuller bust element added in. And one of the things that's important to notice is that this is not a straight line. This actually curves down a little bit. So if I line this up with the grain line here, you can see this slight little dip down. So where I'm sitting at this 1 inch mark here on the waist seam, it goes up a tiny bit there, and I'm not really sure I need that curve. I think that's probably more related to the fact that there's a dart here, and I'm not gonna have a dart in this bodice, so that I'm not gonna be really messing with. But I do wanna dip down, and I will say it's really kinda just over a 1/4 inch, or just over 1/8 of an inch, not even quite a 1/4 inch. So I don't think it needs to go down dramatically necessarily, but again, this one does already have a dart, so that is giving you a bit of extra shape there. I think I am gonna dip down the front of it by about 1/2 inch. I feel like that usually works for me. And then I'll kind of curve back to the line that I found at the waist. So I need to mark here where the waist is finishing. This would be if it was a straight line, but I want to bump the front down by 1/2 inch. I'm gonna make a new line there. I think I'm gonna go for this curved ruler here. You really don't need this to curve very much at this stage. It's more it needs to curve as it's going up. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. So there's a little bit of a gentle curve down to make the center front a bit lower. So again, then I just need to kind of true these two lines up. And I want to start a little bit lower to make sure I've got space in the bust. So then again, we've got a bit of a shape to give a little more space in the bust area. As an extra wrinkle, I did want to lower the neckline a little bit on this blouse. So when you get this pattern, this is what it looks like, but you can actually download these PDF pieces from the Anna Allen blog. I will put a link to it if you guys are interested. But basically it gives you a new piece that will allow you to narrow the shoulder seam and make a bigger, deeper, lower neckline. But I don't actually want it to be as deep as that. I've made both versions and I kind of want to go halfway between the two. So rather than lining this up here and then going from there, I'm going to actually go up just kind of a little bit. So I'm basically, we're about 3.5 inches below the original neckline. Because this is nice and straight, when you fold this over, it will still be nice and straight when you're doing your bias binding edge. But because this is more curved, she's created the piece specifically so that when you fold it over, it's all still gonna line up well. So I really wanna copy this zigzag section before I then figure out my curve. So I'm just trying to visualize how that's gonna look. And I feel like that's a nice shape for the neckline to be. And I think it's quite handy if I can use the corner of this notch so that way I can match it on the back piece, because I'm essentially removing this whole section. Whoops. That's going to be my new neckline. So I need to create a new curve from here to the inside of that notch. And that's my new back neckline, so I know the two are going to match up. Cutting forward to Teresa in the future, because I actually realized something that I didn't realize when I was cutting this out. This center, wherever the button is on your button band, that is actually the center point that you need to look at to figure out the length from here to here, because that is your center front length. So what I should have done is looked at the finished jumpsuit where the button was going to be compared to that side seam, and that should have then been what I was matching my new bodice pattern to. Just FYI, if you do want to do this kind of a hack. I figured it out now, might as well tell you guys so you know. So I ended up with a whole meter of fabric left over. I bought 3 meters because I wasn't quite sure what I needed, and apparently I only needed 2, which I think is pretty good going. So I'm just going to be winding my bobbin, changing my needle over. I'm going to go for a microtex needle because this viscose twill fabric, it feels a little delicate, and I worry sometimes with viscose you can get these kind of snags that go through, and I feel like if you use a microtex needle you are less likely to have that. I'm very much like batch as much as you can, get as much done at once as you can. So I've actually already basted the sleeve so that I can sew or pin and sew the sleeves together at the same time when I'm pinning and sewing the bodice front and back together. Because I want to have more space in the front bodice for the bust than in the back, I do have a bit of excess. Hopefully you can see that this is not sitting completely straight, and I'm going to have to ease the front bodice into the back bodice at the side seam. You could definitely do a row of basting stitches along here if you wanted to ease it in really gradually, but I'm very much just like a pull and pin as you go. So I know that that's going to be about halfway. And then I'm gonna go like, okay, well, what's halfway between those halfway points? And I can see I've got these little bubbles that I'm gonna have to just smooth out. I'm hoping that's easy to see. And I just basically pull everything, pin in the middle, pull everything, pin in the middle until it's sitting flat. And then that's gonna ease in essentially when I sew it. Nice and smooth on the side that's been eased in. Hopefully you guys can see. It's gone in fine. There's no gathers, no tucks, and there's now more room in the front bodice than in the back bodice, which is where I need it. I tend to trim down fairly close to the stitch line so you guys can see. I don't know, I know some people don't trim down, and I've regretted it at times when I wished I could let seams out. But I feel like if you trim right at the edge, or if you serge right at the edge, sometimes you don't get as smooth of a line. So I like to just trim a little bit off. That's why I like a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance as well. So I am working here with a single row of gathering stitches. I think I'm going to be absolutely fine. I know that a lot of people would be shocked and upset to see just one row of gathering stitches. I generally would do 2 if it was a thicker fabric, but this fabric is so lightweight, I think I could definitely get away with it. And it seems to gather really easily, so I don't think I'm going to have a problem. It's almost like perfectly gathered itself anyway, just from the tension of the machine. So I think I'm going to be fine. I do have a couple of like rebel sewing habits. So this is one, just depending on the fabric I might do. As you would have seen when I was cutting out my fabric, I don't generally pre-press my fabric before I start cutting it out, which is probably a very bad thing to do, but I do still do it, and I'm not gonna say that I don't do it. I do wash it, and I try and make it nice and flat before I put it away. Sometimes I press it if it is super creased, but usually I just hang it over something and it will straighten out, and then I can roll it up or fold it up and put it away. And when I am cutting out fabric, because I do have this bad habit, I know that I need to just spend a little bit of time to make sure everything is sitting super flat before I actually cut any pieces, but it works good enough for me, guys. I would love to hear what your like rebel sewing habits are, because I know I'm not the only one who doesn't always follow the rules. Every single person out there, I'm sure you will have certain things that you do and certain things that you just kind of meh, good enough, that'll do. I don't really see the point of doing that. So let me know in the comments down below. finished, gathered very nicely despite my single row of gathering stitches. I'm happy with that. I think it looks nice on the inside as well. And then turning the sleeve inside out. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. I feel like I can't hold it up in the way that it looks as wonderful. Maybe it does and I just can't tell, but oh, I am so excited. This fabric is glorious. So I've made a bodice now. I need to add still the buttons and I want to figure out where I'm going to put the buttons, so I need to put this on first and that will give me an idea of how it's looking so far. You guys are very much catching me in that mid-project excitement. I am so in love with how this is looking so far. I love the neckline, where I've made that. I love the sleeves. This fabric is amazing. Ugh, I think it's gonna be so good. The fit, generally super happy. So yeah, I've pinned where I want the buttons to be-ish. I need to figure out, depending on the bra, like my bust apex changes a little bit, so I want to make sure it's at the fullest point. Probably needs to be a tiny bit lower, but I'm gonna get some buttonholes on. I don't know if I'll get the buttons done or not today. I feel like it'd be good to finish this bodice today, and I feel like I'm most of the way there, so I might just finish up, but so far so good. The buttons that I have, I think are gonna be so perfect. It's hard to show you really, guys, on here, but I feel like it brings out the pink. I think it's gonna be great. And yeah, I'm loving this jumpsuit so far. Oh, and I have to just point out, guys, if that is not winning at Thread Chicken, then I don't know what is. It is 2 days later. I did not get any sewing time yesterday because it was a work day, so there was just no opportunity for it. But this jumpsuit has very much been on my mind. You guys know what it's like when you're partway through a project. I feel like I can see the end goal. I can see my finished garment. My vision is coming together and I am so excited to get it made up. The bodice turned out better than I was anticipating. I will show you guys where I got up to, but I'm up early. I want to see what I can get done early this morning. I've actually set my sewing things up in the kitchen, which is just over here. My sewing room is right next to our bedroom and my husband is still sleeping because it's still so early, but I'm going to see what I can do early this morning and I'm really hoping that I can get this thing finished today. So the buttons are on. I know the lighting isn't great here, guys. You'll get proper photos, but yeah, the buttons have all gone on. I realized this jumpsuit's actually a lot easier to put together and add the buttons on later because I am gonna have to sew relatively close to this bottom button. I'll be fine. I know I've got enough wiggle room, but note to self, sew this overlapping together and then add the buttons on after you finish the jumpsuit. But I will say, yeah, it's all good. We finished the bottom, which is part of the next step. I think the buttons look beautiful. I'm just so excited just putting this on. It's like a really beautiful blouse. It's a strange length, so I probably wouldn't wear it like this. But the next bit, really the final bit I need to do is just to make the pants and then attach it to the top of the jumpsuit. Sewing Rebel move number 87. I do not press my seam toward the pocket bag when I'm understitching. I press it afterwards. I feel like if I don't press it before, I can really pull everything the way I want it to go before I stitch it in place. When you press things, sometimes they get creased and not quite as far close to the seam as you can. So I basically like pull that seam apart as I'm stitching, and I feel like I get a better understitching that way. So this is the inside of my pocket bag here, and everything is pulled really nice and taut as that's been stitched into place. I will then press it back, and that seam will then stay on the inside of the pocket. But I feel like that gives me a neater line there. So this is my moment of truth. I have sewn together the front of the pants. I know because it's drapey fabric, you're not going to be able to see super well, but that is the center seam of the pant. This is the side of the pants with the pocket there. And I basically need to see if the length from the center front to the side seam matches the bodice that I forgot to adjust. It's not too bad. So obviously this hasn't been sewn. This is just the front of the pants, and I wanted to adjust this before I sewed it to the back because I knew that was going to be the time to do it. I haven't sewn this on, so I do need to subtract the seam allowance. But there is, I want to say, it looks like about an inch. I don't know if you can see. So this is my side seam of the bodice, and this is what's overhanging. If I take off the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, it's probably only like, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch or something like that I'm off, which is really good luck. So I can basically just trim a little 1/4 inch off of the side seam, and then when I sew the front and the back of the pants together, I should be able to match the top and the bottom of this jumpsuit together. Equally, I'm sure I could just ease them in, but I feel like I'll have an easier time if I just trim a tiny bit back first. I don't want to lose my notch, so I'm extending that in. And then just taking, whoops, a bit off. I like the way this pattern makes the drawstring channel, so this is where I realized I should have put the button on after, but also I should have left a bit more space there. This button definitely wants to be a bit higher up. It's kind of pointless. It'd be very awkward to try and unbutton and use that button at this point. But these are the buttonholes that are going to be for the drawstring channel that I've already created. Let me turn it inside out. This is what you have from the inside, so you can see the buttonholes here. And the way you put it together is you put the bottom and the top, so the trouser and the bodice together, sew at a 1-inch seam allowance, which is what this is here, and you trim down just the trouser part, and then you fold this over, and then you're going to be stitching along here to create the channel. I want to stitch from the outside, so I'm just going to press this down because I've only just sewn it now. It needs a good press towards the bottom. I'm going to stick some pins in, and then I'll show you how I'm going to sew it from the right side. So we are back in the sewing room, and I'm just feeling on the back to make sure that this is all pressed down where I want it to be, and then pinning it in place on the right side. You could definitely use like some Wonder Tape or glue stick or something to make sure that it's down on the other side, but I feel happy to just feel my way, use pins, and then I'll feel as I'm sewing as well to make sure that nothing has gotten twisted or rolled up. So I've pinned that all in place, and basically what I want to be doing, this is the seam that connects the bodice to the trouser, and I want to sew 3/4 of an inch from this seam. You can do it from the inside, and then you can see where you're sewing and make sure you're going along the edge, but I want it to look good from the outside. That's the part that's going to be visible. So it can be tricky because if you're covering the throat plate, you cannot see any measurements. But I'm going to use this as like a little quilting guide thing to put it in the right place to make sure that it's going to be 3/4 of an inch all the way around. This goes into the back of the needle, and I can show you guys what it looks like when I'm using it. So this slots in at the back of the foot, and I can slide this along to be wherever I want it to be. It's supposed to be 3/4 of an inch, which would be here. I will say that I don't necessarily trust my lines to be that straight, and I don't want to end up with a gap in my channel, so I'm going to move it further over, closer to like 5/8, 1/2 inch, and that's plenty of room for my channel. So I am feeling, and I can feel that the ridge of the fabric underneath is here, so I know that I'm definitely creating an encased loop. So then this is what the channel looks like from the inside. So I have the finished bottom edge of the bodice, and then I have that gap where I'm gonna put my drawstring through. And then from the outside, because it's a pretty good thread match, honestly, you don't see a whole lot. That's the seam, and then that is the line for the channel, which I don't even know if you can see, guys. It's pretty there and there. And so yeah, then I just need to actually make a drawstring and put it through here. And then the only thing that's left after that is to hem it. So I am very close. I realized that there's not actually a piece for the drawstring because they just tell you you can use like a piece of drawstring, like a piece of cord or rope or something like that, which I don't want to do. I do actually want to put a proper matching drawstring in there. So I'm just going to need to cut out a strip of fabric that I can then create a little like thin drawstring from and then thread it through. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out now. So drawstring is officially installed. It is looking really very done. So what I need to do now, all that's left, I want to give it a really good press, and then I need to figure out how I want to hem it. So I'm going to need to try it on and do some pinning to figure out the length of it, but very close. And I'm done. I love my new jumpsuit. It is very much what I was hoping it would be. I was looking for a floral autumnal fabric, something with a bit of drape. I wanted a jumpsuit with some feminine details, and I did not see the jumpsuit that I envisioned in my mind out there in the wild, and I had to make it happen, and I'm so glad with how it turned out. I feel like these two patterns go absolutely perfectly together. I will absolutely be making this mashup jumpsuit again with some adjustments just to make sure that I get everything right next time around. But I do think it would be cool in all kinds of fabrics. I want to see it in more of like a structured fabric to get more of a poof on the sleeve. But as it is, honestly, I feel so beautiful and so elegant in this thing. I feel so autumnal. It is very much what I wanted. I hope it was fun to follow along the creative process with me. I thought it would be interesting to show you a little bit more kind of behind the scenes. If I was doing a tutorial video, I'd be doing everything by the book, just like you're supposed to. But the reality is, when I'm sewing for myself and I'm sewing for pleasure, I make shortcuts. I sometimes do things a little bit differently than how they're recommended, and I know I am not the only one. So sewing rebels out there, all of you, tell me the things that you do that you're not supposed to do, or that maybe you skip past or you do them your own way, because at the end of the day, we are the ones in charge of our sewing, and we are the ones who need to be happy with the finished outcome. And I tell you guys, I am totally happy with the finished outcome and very happy with all the choices I made along the way. I hope I have inspired you guys to do a little bit of pattern hacking, mashing up different patterns together. I think when you buy a sewing pattern and you really like it and it fits you well, it is such a great base to then work from and make things a little bit different and make something really truly unique for you. Please do let me know if you enjoyed this video. It is definitely a different style of video for me. Give me a like if you enjoyed it. Tell me down in the comments down below as well. Please make sure you're subscribed to my channel to see upcoming videos, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye!